Hello there, I am Stephanie and this is Stacks on Stacks on Stacks. Today I'm coming to you with my very first April wrap-up. Now I know that I wasn't actually booktubing in April, but I read books in April, so I'm going to share those with you guys today. Our first book today that we're going to be talking about is called Out of My Mind, and it is by Sharon M. Draper. Now, this is a book, and it could be considered a little more middle grade, maybe because the main character is a little bit young, and it is a contemporary, which means it's like in the now world, not fictional, and it's about a young girl who has cerebral palsy, and basically she can't talk, but she's highly intelligent, and the whole book is told from her point of view. You're in her head the whole time. So like, you know, people ask her a question and all she can do is like kind of half smile and maybe drool. And cerebral palsy is like a devastating condition that kids are born with, I believe. And they don't really have use of their limbs at all, like their arms, their legs. They don't walk. They usually can't talk. So it's incredible because the inside, like, she's very smart. She has a photographic memory, and you tell her something once and she's always going to remember that. And that's all in here, but it never comes out because she can't talk. I gave this book about a 2.7 out of 5 for Goodreads, and I didn't love it. And I wanted to love it, but I didn't love it. It wasn't even at times that it was slow. It was a little bit slow. There wasn't a lot of plot progression. I mean, there was some, but it wasn't a lot. And it's not a very big book. So maybe that was some of it. I don't know. But I kind of wanted more. Like, I wanted more conflict. I wanted more of something. And I didn't get it. So I didn't love it. For me, if I give a book a 3.5, I'll probably read it again. If I give it a 4, or 4 to a 5, I will definitely read it again and probably refer the snot out of it. I can be kind of a hard grader sometimes, but this one I would give a pretty solid 2.7, 2.8. It's definitely worth a read, but I don't know if it's one that I'd necessarily reread. The next book we have is book number 6 in the series of unfortunate events. This is the Ersatz Elevator. I think I'm saying that wrong. I think I said it wrong the whole time. By Lemony Snicket's. And I am enjoying reading this series. I was trying to read 2 books a month. That didn't happen. I'm not going to talk too much about this book because to kind of know what's going on, I'd have to spoil the other 5, and I don't want to do that for you. Basically, the book's series starts out with The Bad Beginning, which is the first book, and you have 3 kids who become orphans at the beginning of the book, and then they have to go stay with an uncle to raise them, and he turns out to be a bad dude. So that's about all I'm going to tell you because these books got spoiled for me and I did not appreciate that, but I am still enjoying them. I gave this one about a 3 out of 5, so it's one I enjoyed. I probably won't read it again, but I did enjoy it for what it was. Next we have The Problem with Forever by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the first Jennifer L. Armentrout book I have read. I know there are a ton out there and they're all amazing, but of course I pick a contemporary one to read. And I very, very much enjoyed this book. I actually gave it about a 3.8 out of 5. And I'm not a big contemporary reader, so it kind of surprised me that I gave it such a good score, because most contemporary I'm kind of like, eh. And now that I think about it, I have read a lot of contemporary this month, which is not like me. So way to shake it up. I did like it. Basically, this is a book about a girl who's in the foster system, and it starts and she's really little and she goes through some really horrific crap, and then she's a teenager. Like, you see a little bit, and then she's a teenager and she's dealt with a lot of it, but she has a lot of anxiety, like social anxiety and being in public and things. So she's 17 years old. She's going to public school for the first time, and she's a little scared, and her adopted parents are a little nervous, but she wants to do this. This is part of her healing process. And while she's at school, she meets somebody from her past who was in a foster home with her, and it's a good story. I mean, it's definitely contemporary. So if you're like, I don't like insta love, I don't like the predictable, you might not like this. It is predictable, but I like the fact it was about two foster kids. I feel like that's different. I feel like that's not something, at least not something I've read. And foster kids, like, they got it rough, man. Like, it is not cool at all. My husband and I help run a kids camp for foster kids. It's only 1 week every summer, and the kids are between like 6 and 12 years old. So they're not the same age as the girl in this book, but they're the same kids. And I felt like I was reading about my kids, and I was like, oh, my kids, no, don't do that. So I did like that. I probably gave this one a little more than I would most contemporaries because it was different, and I like different. So this is one I would definitely read. I would tell people to read this book because being a contemporary, it was real, it was accurate, and I liked the characters. A few of the characters really lacked some development, and I felt like they pushed hard, like, oh, but this character does this, and I was like, no, they really don't have the background to do that. But that aside, I still gave it like a pretty good rating. So next, I read Everything by Nicola Yoon. This, I think I gave a 4.2 out of 5. I would probably reread this book. Again, I don't read a lot of contemporary, but I liked this contemporary. It's becoming a movie soon, so I'm sure lots and lots of people are trying to hurry up and read it. It's basically about a girl who has that bubble boy disease, the one where they can't leave the house because they're allergic to everything. And so basically she's stuck at home, but she's okay with that. Like, she likes her life at home. She reads lots of books, and she has a tutor that comes to her, and her mom's a doctor, so her mom can really help her, and she has a nurse who's there, like, while her mom's not there to check on her, make sure she's not getting sick, all that kind of good stuff. And then a cute boy moves in next door. Ooh. Again, I'm not a fan of insta-love and stuff like that, and I wouldn't say it was insta-love, but it was pretty quick. And then she changes things, and she suddenly wants to go outside, and she suddenly wants to experience things. Like, what's life worth living if you don't live it? And I kind of agree. But it wasn't as predictable as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was predictable, and then I looked at it and I'm like, well, there's like a third of the book left, so I don't think it's as predictable as I thought. And it wasn't. And it was sweet, and it gave me like, you know, not little girl feels, but like little teenage girl feels, like, oh, that's so sweet. So I did like it. I gave it a 4.2 out of 5 stars. It's probably something I'll read again sometime because I did like it. I like Nicola Yoon's writing style, and she kind of, it's not like diary entries, but it's like little short sections and pictures, and I'm a sucker for anything with pictures, so I did enjoy it. I would say to read this. I've had a few people read it, and one person who read it was like, it was predictable. And the other person who read it was like, it was so sweet. So to each his own. But I say read it. Next, we have The Sun is Also a Star, also by Nicola Yoon. I read Everything, and then I was like, I need to read her newest book. So I did. And I liked it. And I feel like it was different. To me, I almost feel like Everything was kind of a fairy tale. And I feel like The Sun is Also a Star was kind of like a news article. Like, it was a lot more realistic and applicable to everything. It's about a girl who is an illegal immigrant in America, in New York City. And she didn't know until her father got caught with something. And then they're like, well, you have to leave the country because, yeah, you have to. And so basically it's her last day in the country, and her mother, father, and brother are all being forced to leave the country. And she's running around New York City trying to find a way to stop that. Find a way to not be sent away back to Jamaica. And then, of course, because it's contemporary, she meets a boy. Now, it is insta-love, or at least half of it is. I don't want to give too much away, but one of them falls for the other before the other falls for them. It's pretty cute. I did give this book like a 4.2 out of 5. It took me a little bit. I took a few days to process this book because I was trying to decide, do I like it more than Everything or less? And I would say I like it the same. I just like it in different ways. Like, the things I liked about Everything were not the same things I liked about The Sun is Also the Star. So I would say read this one too. Like, I did find it more applicable. I live nowhere near New York City. I've never even been to New York City. I know, right? So I think there's a little bit of a detachment there for me, but you know, I think a lot of people will read this, and I think it's a little bit eye-opening, honestly, to some of the laws we have. Not to get too political too deep, because while I don't do politics, it's just a good book, and it really does make you think, and I always like a book that makes me think. And the last book I read this month is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. It's a library book. I do frequent my library and get lots of books and ebooks and audiobooks from my library. I read this book in one sitting. I can count on one hand the books that I have read in one sitting, and I would have to say it'd be like 3, and I'm not counting like The Cat in the Hat and things like that. That rhymed. Now here's the thing with Agatha Christie. She was a big author, I think in the late 20s. This is glaring a lot. In the late 20s, and then through the 30s and the 40s. And the thing is, she's a genius. She is a woman ahead of her time. This is the second Agatha Christie book that I have read. It will not be the last. I'll probably read a bunch of hers. I just got a bunch and I will haul them in a few days. But I will be reading a lot more Agatha Christie because she was just so far ahead of her time. It's a little ridiculous. Like I read these books and I'm like, oh my goodness, it reminds me of this book and this book and this book and this book. Well, actually, those books remind me of this because this was written like 70 years earlier. They're thrillers, but they're not like scary, which is good because I'm a coward and I don't do scary, but they're thrillers all the same. And they're kind of like a psychological thriller, like we're going to mess with your mind and make you think things that may or may not be true. Who knows? Who's to say? Who's to say? Well, I totally enjoyed it. And I read Murder on the Orient Express last fall, and I loved that one too. And I cannot believe I read this in one sitting. I can't stress that to you enough. I am a slow reader. What happened was I had a little time over lunch last week, like, well, a little time. I had like an hour to eat my lunch, and I was like, I'm going to sit down and read this book over my lunch. And I read and I read and I read, and then I realized I was 2/3 the way through the book, and I look at my watch, and my client stood me up. They didn't come in, and I was like, I want to be mad, but I really just want to finish my book. So I did, and it was fantastic. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Basically, what this is about is a bunch of people, 10 people, take a boat out to an island. Of course, an island, a secluded place where there's nobody around. They get there and they are confronted, and they are told that they are all murderers, and that they're all gonna die. So then the first person dies, and you're just like, that took like no time at all. And then the next person dies, the next, and you're just like trying to figure out who's the killer, who's doing this, what's their motivation, how are they doing this, and the whole thing just has you like thinking and thinking and thinking, and then you think it's this, and oh nope, they died. Okay, it's this person. No, they're dead too. So I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the suspense, the thrill. The writing was incredible, and you know what gets me is the characters weren't particularly deep, but it moved so quickly it almost didn't matter because we had a great plot. We had a driving force behind it, and you know, we get to know a character and they die. So, you know, how much character development do you really need when they're only on like 18 pages? So I loved it. I gave it a 5 out of 5 because it is a book that I'll definitely read again. And then I went and got the miniseries from my library and I watched that too. And I would give that a 5 out of 5, except it's not a book. But I liked it. And that is it. Those are all the books that I have read this month. I have read 6 books, which is actually a little more than I usually do. I'm usually in the 4 or 5 range. I want you guys to go ahead and leave down below a couple of books that you're reading this month, or maybe if you've already read these books, like leave the Goodreads rating that you gave them, or maybe your thoughts on one of them. Also, if you like this video, please give me a big thumbs up. And if you want to subscribe, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button below so that you will be notified every time I put up a new video. Again, thank you guys for watching, and I will look forward to seeing you soon.